Right, evening everybody. Evening. And welcome to Cobbles of Doom on Coronation Street, Doctor Who crossovers.
What made you call it that?
That was the crossover. It's very fun. It's a Doctor Who story waiting to happen, that one, I think.
It is, yeah. The crossover.
Crossover one.
Better than that EastEnders one. Contentious. Right from the off.
Well, thank you all for braving what is turning out to be quite cold night. I'm delighted to announce that we've got a guest, Phil Collinson, with us. Obviously, very famous fan produced not only Doctor Who and Coronation Street, but also Sea of Souls as well. People remember that?
No one remembers.
We've got quite a few little video montages with some very unexpected surprises and clips coming up tonight. And we'll kick straight off by having a little look at the career of one Mr. Phil Collinson.
Oh. Professional.
When Doctor Who moved down the M4 to set up production in Cardiff, head writer Russell T Davis and producer Phil Collinson found themselves working on the show they'd been watching all their lives.
You both watched Doctor Who as a child, didn't you? Do you think that is where your desire for working television came from?
Yes, like the first stories I used to sort of walk around and think up, you would do inside in the yard, and I would think up stories, I used to draw them.
Originally, I didn't set out wanting to work behind the scenes, I wanted to be an actor. But I think Doctor Who was one of the big reasons I wanted to be an actor. So I suppose by default it's a big reason why I ended up being in TV.
And what about you?
Obviously what we've had to do is work out how do we fit a live episode into the middle of a disaster movie. Well, what we've decided to do is a live disaster movie.
And you're up year on year, you're up summer on summer, and since you joined the show, the ratings have gone up.
Exactly. I do.
It's like taking over a Manchester United or something, you know. It's massive coming here and doing this, and what a year to do it, yeah.
To be one of the people here making it again, it's absolutely thrilling.
For me.
Oh, that's like the fluctuating weight of Phil Collins. Oh my God.
It's almost like this is your life.
Terrifying.
I love that this morning. It was
Yeah.
very confident Philip Schofield. You quite right with
Oh, I was furious. I was furious. I tell you the story about that very quickly. So I'd been producing Coronation Street. We'd had an amazing 50th anniversary, which everybody, the whole country stopped. It was everything I hoped it would be. And it was magnificent. And then we decided to tell a story about Audrey meeting a chap who was a transvestite. And oh my God, nothing prepared me for how blistering the British press and the public can be when they don't like something, and they fucking hate it. And so, almost overnight, we went from, or I went, from being, you know, the producer of Coronation Street, who delivered this amazing 50th that everybody loved and had appreciated, to this national pariah. And there was, the very last edition of the News of the World, the very last, which I'm actually quite proud of, a whole page was devoted to me. and a picture, real life size, but almost picture, it felt like that when I looked at it anyway. It's like you could have cut round it, made a mask of me. And how terrible I was, and how gay issues were all being thrust down everybody's throat. And I was absolutely horrified, so I felt like I had to defend myself and the show and the writers and what we were trying to do. And that was the result of this fervent edition of this morning, where I didn't let poor Michelle Collins had gone with me. Didn't I get away? I think at one point I even put my hand over her. Trying to speak.
I'm afraid you can't
I do, because I was absolutely furious about the whole thing. And it was all lies, because they'd said that that 3 million people had turned off, they said. And actually what had happened was, they took the rating from the Wimbledon semi-final with, what's his name, who won it this year? Andy Murray. And it was the first time he'd ever got, I think, to the semi, and so the whole nation watched it. And so of course and it ran on and ran on. So they didn't watch Corrie. So they took that rating, which was like 6.5 million, and then they took the rating on the Wednesday where it was a huge story spike. I can't remember exactly what. Someone will probably tell me. No. Anyway, it was like a huge big end of a story, which got 10 million viewers. And they went, oh, well, of course, he got 6 million on that Tuesday, and he got 10 million on Friday, so, you know, 4 million people have turned up, and it's because he's gay, and it's all gay issue. So I was furious, so that's why. Anyway.
Brilliant clip, though. So you've got these two giant sandpits that you've played in over the years, both Doctor Who and Coronation Street. What on earth do you do with it? How does it feel when it's like?
Well, I don't know. Life's funny, isn't it? Because if I could go back and look at my, 10-year-old self and tell him, he wouldn't believe you, and that's where your life would take you. And it all happens sort of by accident, really. Well, it has done for me. I certainly didn't set out with a plan. I was terrible at school, and I left school with 4 O-levels, having tried to get 4 O-levels twice. The first set, I got 1 O-level when I was 16, and then my parents made me resit them, so I resat them and got another 3 in religion, Latin, English literature and English language. So you weren't going to do much with OER, were you, really? So I sort of thought, oh, what should I do? So I trained to be a chef. So I learned to cook, and because I thought, well, you could always get a job cooking. Well, yes. And while I was doing that, I met a friend who was a huge Doctor Who fan, and also an amateur dramatic person. And so he took me there, and as a boy from a council estate in Leeds, I'd never even been exposed to amateur dramatics, because they wouldn't have done that in our school, in our church hall or whatever. It would have been burnt to the ground, I think, if they tried to put a play on. But he lived in a posh bit of Leeds called Woodley, and that's where we used to go and do and put plays in. And that was my first experience of sort of drama, theatre, and anything that was any other than just making a living, I suppose. So I did that, and I got to the end of that, and I thought, God, I'd love to be an actor, I decided. So I applied to various drama schools, and I'd set all kinds of auditions up, and then one audition that came up for that year, and it was the only one because everyone else was working for the following year, and it was a place called Bretton Hall where the League of Gentlemen had gone. It was a very experimental place. I didn't know that at the time. It was just a drama school to me, but it was brilliant. It was the most amazing place to go and learn about just everything to do with theatre, because it wasn't just theatre, because you learn about film, and you learn about experimental theatre, everything. It wasn't just a sort of classical training, although there was a little bit of that. So you learn how to use a sword. It is clearly very important, valuable. But mainly you learn what drama was, and you learn to think about drama for yourself, and write for yourself, and direct. It was all about all of that. So that's where I ended up going. I got offered a place there, having auditioned, and that's where I ended up going. And that, I suppose, was the beginning of it. And I suppose again in those days, you could do that. I think now it would be much harder, because you'd think, God, I can't go there because I've got to pay the fees. But then in those days, the fees were paid for you, thankfully. So as a boy from a council estate in Leeds, you could go, and that was it, the beginning of a brilliant time for me.
And I mean, you're not the only Doctor Who producers who have had something to do with Coronation Street, or the only Doctor Who figure. We've got 2 pictures on the board here. We'll see if anybody recognises the left-hand one.
Oh, I know that is.
But Donald Tosh, who was the script editor during William Hartnell's reign, he was absolutely instrumental when he was working with Granada and getting Coronation Street under the nose of Sidney Bernstein. Famously.
Oh, I didn't know that, really.
Glad
I came.
Famously, we had him up at the last Gareth Who Collinson. He told this marvellous story of how he's got Tony Warren's treatment for what was then Florizel Street, pinned on his notice board with Sidney Bernstein's comment, "No one's ever going to be interested in a backstreet story set in Manchester." Somebody got the last laugh there. The figure on the left is actually Mr. Barry Letts.
Barry Letts, isn't it?
Wow.
Yes.
And we've actually managed to dig a clip out of the archives. This is November 1961.
Somebody working together like a team, you know. The big thing is to understand. Oh. Wentworth? No, 167. Oh, he's wrong. Yes. I was going to say that the big thing in our work is understanding what makes people tick. You know, the psychological factors?
Oh, yes, of course, I see that quite
Yeah, well,
clearly.
you'll learn something about psychology at university, but theoretically it should stand in considerable advantage here. But, while I'll come to the point, this department is called upon to handle a considerable variety of people, but the thing to remember is that they're nearly all of them working people. Now, don't get the wrong idea, pal. I'm not being snobbish. No, on the contrary, I get on extremely well with the men here. I couldn't handle this job if I didn't.
Thank God he went into producing. It's a little bit like me. Shall I tell you my Barry Letts story? So when we launched Doctor Who, and it was terribly anticipated, and we launched it in Cardiff. Of course we did, because all the Russell was fervent. We've got to get all those journalists to come up. So we bussed everybody up to the St David's Hotel in Cardiff. So every tough old hack from Fleet Street, which they never go anywhere, but they all got on this bus to come up to Cardiff. And so everybody was jammed into that. And we also peppered it with important people from the show's history. And I went with my brother and my sister-in-law, who was sort of one each side propping me up because I was petrified of what people were going to think of the show. And of all the people to be sat behind, I ended up sat behind Terence Dicks. So I'm there, Terence Dicks is there, and Barry Letts is there. And somehow they got to know that I was sat behind, and they turned round and introduced themselves to me, and I was barely could speak because, of course, I should say as well that I was the biggest Doctor Who fan in the world when I was a little boy, and when I was growing up, it was my favourite show in the whole world. So I knew exactly who they were, and I'd read a million Terence Dicks books, and I just knew, because you did, didn't you? You knew what these sort of legendary names were. Anyway, so they turned out, and they were terribly polite, and then Barry Letts said to me, well, you'll soon know what we think of this. Because the last one I went to, I walked out halfway through because it was rubbish. Which was the Paul McGann one, and apparently he had famously, they'd shown it somewhere at I don't know, some famous venue. And apparently he walked out, and it was fabulously knelt down because he didn't put his stamp on. So I spent the whole of watching the first 45 minutes waiting for him to get up. He's going to stand any minute, and he didn't. And it got to the end, and the credits rolled, and we then showed a montage of what the series would be. And the very last clip we showed was the clip of Dalek, where Rose and Adam are stood at the top of the stairs going, "No, you can't get us now." And the Dalek lifts and flies for what we pretended was the first time. And the whole room rose to its feet. Hardened journalists, I'm not kidding you, hardened journalists, everybody alike, just in that moment, because they'd watched that episode and they liked it, and all rose to their feet and clapped. And he turned round to me and he said, "Well, I'm still here." And that was the best pat on the back, and I thought, "Oh, we got something." He was a wonderful man, actually, really nice. And then after, when the first episode had gone out and it was clear that we had something, he wrote me a letter, which I've still got, and a really lovely letter saying what a great job it was and how much he was enjoying it. So, yeah, really nice. I'll stop waffling. See him terrified. God, we've only got now.
My grandmother actually went to school with him. She was in a couple of years below Logan, I think she always said.
Where?
Leicester.
Oh, in Leicester, he was from
Leicester.
Leicester. He's a terrible actor, though, isn't he? Let's be honest.
He's
like he's shouting at him.
There's so many flops. I've cut the flops out of the
That's
start.
good, well good. You've been kind to Barry.
Yeah,
God rest him.
You did the line of Coronation Street to move on to the next montage for the 50th, the iconic tram.
With Graham Harper, marvellous Graham Harper.
Energetic.
Yes, marvellous.
Was there any ever talk of doing a live episode of Doctor Who?
Yes, there was. And we realised we couldn't do it. No, there was. Let me try and put it in context. We thought that we'd do one, like a middles episode, you know, when we realised, well, after the first year, when we realised we were going to have to do 14 a year, that we did talk about doing one of them live, because obviously you think, well, you can stop and you can just, in 3 weeks, get an episode out, and also get, but I don't know about the thing about Doctor Who, it just wouldn't be as good. I don't know, what would you do? The monster would trip over, they do. You know, you wouldn't really be able to get visual effects in it. I don't know what it would be. I mean, I'm sure a better man than me will produce a live Doctor Who, I'm sure at some
Did you
point.
manage the live CGI in Coronation Street?
We did, but it's only one shot.
Yeah.
It's one shot, but I'm very proud of the one shot that we did, yeah.
Well,
But that was a big thing. I mean, to do, you know, I remember it was one of the first meetings I did when I took over Coronation Street was to go to London and talk to Peter Fincham, who I knew anyway from Doctor Who, because he'd been controller of BBC One when we made Doctor Who, and about what we would do for the Coronation Street 50th. And I was really pushing for us to do a live, and he was saying, oh, the EastEnders have just done that, how do we make it feel different? I said, EastEnders was shit, that's how we made it. Ours will be magnificent. And he was, well, how did you make that? So I talked to him about the plan, what we would do, and the crash. And he genuinely said, well, where will the live be? Will the live be at the beginning or the end? And I went, no, it'll be right in the middle. In the heart of it, and it'll be live like nobody else has ever done it. It's like, really? And I was like, yes, because that's what will make it different. We'll either end up with egg all over our face and it'll be terrible, or it'll be magnificent and nobody will have been able to believe that we could pull it off. Either way, you'll get, you know, a lot of viewers to watch it, and a lot of people, even if they don't watch it on the night, if it's crap, they'll all be, you know, I play with it, or whatever you call it, ITV play with it. So yeah, so so you know, it was an amazing thing to do.
Did we all enjoy it?
Yes.
I think it shows as well. Let's have a little look at death on the Cobbles.
Sir, we found the girl.
Well, where is she?
She's with the president. With the Line 2 on your own mixer.
Ambulance! Someone's collapsed. I think it's a heart attack. I think it's a heart attack. 15 Coronation Street, Wenfield. Can you come quick?
Yeah, stand by. Stand back.
Is there a phone anywhere? In the clubhouse? Right, thanks.
What's going on?
Oh, she's marvellous.
Oh, please!
Every piss.
I'm taking it out to what number that? Get in the car! All we're looking for you, I found you and I'm taking you back now. Get in the car!
And I'll just think that.
It's not the best plan in the world, that isn't it, really? Got to the stunt.
Here it comes.
That is the best death ever. Hey! And Barbara loved the fact that she had got to say in the 50s, what is it with me and Trav? She did! She loved that. She got into that.
Reed achieves the rare distinction of having died in classic Who and New Who as well.
Exactly.
It's a great effect. A lot of deaths in Soderland, not specifically Coronation Street, are often quite fantastical. We've got the fantastic picture of Anne Malone in the freezer.
Oh, that was brilliant though.
Gave me nightmares.
You won't get away with that now. Freezing. Was that you were producing it, Emily?
No, I don't
Oh,
think
you
so.
know? She froze to death. She worked in a supermarket. She worked in a supermarket. And she froze to death in the freezers. Even at the time, at like the age of 15, I thought, that's mad.
That's the fact she's clutching 2 cans of WD.
It was brilliant. But they had so much fun with that whole supermarket, didn't they? Brendan, Scott and Curly and Reg and her. It was mad that time. Brilliant as a viewer, but it was mad.
Very brilliant. It's an absolutely fantastic dynamic, that supermarket. It wasn't bad. But,
We shouldn't we? Don't know you'd get away with it now, somehow. I don't know you would.
be a little, wouldn't it?
Well, no, it's not even that. It's sort of, there's a sort of expectation of realism, and I think that's EastEnders. I genuinely do. I think that's the proliferation of it. It's what it's done. It's like teaches the, it's taught the audience to expect something different from it. So, I don't think you could do that. We sort of coast to the, you'd get close to that, and you try. I always used to try and tell classic Corrie stories. Norris locked in the fridge or whatever.
Do a Photoshop.
No, but you would. But essentially, there's a realism about it, and there's a size to it now that isn't the size it was actually. Whether for better or worse, I think for worse. But there you go.
But deaths. I mean, in Doctor Who, you have to be quite careful in what you can and can't show for a family slot.
Yeah, because there's a lot of kids watching.
And this particular, The Empty Child, there was a lot of discussion over the cracking of the skull.
Yes, which we took out. Yeah.
Do you think that deaths have come a little bit more fantastical in the sort of fantasy realm?
Deaths.
So you obviously get like you said, the real ones with heart attacks.
Well, it's funny now because you coast a really fine line. I think soap has it's sort of hyper real, you have to find the balance. So you've got to tell 90% of the stories you tell are people have got to relate to, and then there's got to be like that 10% somewhere in there where you've got a Richard Hillman or a John Stape. I loved the John Stape story, but I suppose I loved it because every step of the way I tried to say, imagine if he was a real man. That's what you've got to do. Imagine that was a real man, and he didn't really mean to kill people, and he didn't really mean, to put a pillow over that woman's face or whatever. He was just trying to shut her up. Let's be honest, she was a right old irritating old cow. So you would. Do you know what I mean? It was, and he was just, he loved Fizz, and he was like, so there was a sort of thread of realism through it, and I think that's when it's best. That's Richard Hillman. I loved Richard Hillman. I think Richard Hillman probably will be the story, and Kay directed the classic car, didn't you? going into the Salford Keys. Is the sort of soap villain story that people will measure every other soap villain story with, probably for a long time, forever probably. And it's because in the middle of it was a man who loved his family, and that's what he was trying to protect. And so you could identify with that actor. When you were sitting at home, you would really, you know, because Gail's not the easiest person. So you just, you know, you just wanted her to find a man and shut up. So you were a bit on his side, actually. You pushed him over the edge. But no, but honestly, in the middle of it was a real man, and he just loved his family and he wanted to hold on to them, and I think that's the secret, and I think that's what sets Corrie apart from EastEnders, actually, because EastEnders casts Jamie Thingy, what was his name? Yeah, who I love, who's a brilliant actor, and of course he's the real deal, isn't it? Because his dad was Mad Frankie and carved up everybody, and the Crays were even frightened of Mad Frankie. And yet it leaves me cold, that, because he's just a villain, and he's just horrible. Corrie villains are multi-layered. Yes, they're multi-layered, and they're lovely, and they love their family, and they just happen to kill someone. That's what I
forgot about
that's the
John Snape running out the doors and
John Snape in the 50th was my favourite bit of the 50th anniversary. It was that live episode, that bit at the end. So he's murdered her, and he's dragged her, and it's like a tram has fallen out of the sky. And it's the best thing in the world. And he's dragging her towards this thing, and he's trying to leave her, and then a policeman turns up and an ambulance driver, and they go, "Oh, what are you doing?" And he has to pretend that he's found her. And then he finds himself, it was the best story. Only half the audience agreed with me, but there you go.
Well, we'll move on to a few clips now, but we've really dug in the archives for this one. This is the companions on the Cobble.
Was he in there? Did you? Well, I've done this for you, Wally. You've certainly got away with the ladies. I'm surprised you didn't try it on with me as well. You could have had the second look. I know you exactly on me, dear. Oh, I'm sorry. Which bit have I got wrong? You being a randy old beggar and good enough to be a granddad, and you being a gold-digging little tar.
A Mr. D. Tanner.
Dennis?
And you know him?
I know of him. I mean, it's a minor, but nonetheless important distinction.
And you happen to know where he lives?
Oh, well, that's a difficult question to answer.
Really? I thought it was perfectly straightforward. Either you know where the man resides or you don't. You will have more salad, won't you, Roger?
No, thank you, Mrs. Walker.
Little more cheese, perhaps?
Oh, no, I've got enough, thank you.
Doesn't seem much, does it? Just cheese and lettuce. There really isn't much more you can eat.
Well, some packets of nuts and raisins in bar.
Oh, they're very nutritious, Mrs. Walker. I often eat them, but I've had enough.
No!
It was very kind of you to ask me.
Oh, not at all. Any friend of Lucille's is a friend of ours.
How's this play of yours going all right?
Oh, very well, Mr. Walker. It's not a difficult thing to learn.
The Way of the World by William Conway.
Can't say I've ever heard of it.
It's a comedy.
Oh, is it? I like a good laugh. But you don't like them white hall tartars?
No, of course it isn't, Jack. It's much deeper than that sort of thing.
Hooray!
Pals. I know you didn't quite mean that the way that it sounded, but you're quite right, and I have been pals.
Have been.
Still are?
Look, tell me something, will you?
Sure, it's not too personal. But you are going to be personal, I can see by the glint in your eye.
Well, why? When you've known him all this time, did you never marry him? Well, I mean, you seem very suited.
It's a good question, though.
I thought it was.
Well, you see, I've been married twice before in my life. First time I was young and daft, you know. Daft enough to fall in love at the drop of a hat.
And the second time?
Well, the second time, still had a bit of love's young dream about it. but it's soured up quite a lot after 20 years. It's just that, well, each time I married, I meant those 3 little words at the time.
But you never said them to Len?
No. There was always something. He's a very attractive fellow. But the something wasn't quite enough to stretch the extra bit between romance and marriage.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I went out with a lad from being 14 till I was nearly 20. Childhood sweethearts made for each other. Our mothers had found a wedding for 3 Junes on the trot. Then I went on holiday to Newquay and I met this young policeman. And you know, inside an hour I felt more collywobbles than I felt for Eric, my boyfriend, in 5 years.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, now we've sorted Len and me out, let's talk about the important people.
Such as?
You and Len.
Well, perhaps that's too personal.
Oh no, it isn't that.
How do you mean?
Shows in your face every time you look at him.
Yeah, I had an idea it did. That extra something you were talking about.
Just for Len? Well, for your sake, love, I hope he feels the same way as you do.
Sam, and you know he's got 2 teeth like little ladies.
I did warn him. Is he down there?
Yeah, sleeping like an angel.
Hold on. Give the station bus, Polly. Train times.
Oh, you're all right.
I'll get the car out then.
Well, they've got guests coming for dinner, Stanley, with it being Chapper's birthday.
Oh, we've got to go then, haven't we? Don't upset their posh friends. You don't want rubbish around to spoil the celebrations, do you?
Oh, Dad, for heaven's sake!
Now, come on, Stanley, I've got...
Have we asked them for out? Have we asked you for out, except or not you've got parents? Even animals do that.
Now we've all made contact, there's no reason why we
But one big happy family? No, love. You must have reasons. Otherwise we'd have been invited to the wedding and the christening, like your parents.
I didn't invite you because I thought you were...
You thought we were what?
Trevor told me I had no parents. He said you were both dead.
Even Trevor, what a rat. Just quickly, we're going to have a short break very shortly, but just quickly, there's a slight thrill to see some of our favourite Doctor Who actors and actresses in other things. And especially there is this lady who I know obviously you've worked with extensively, but we've never really seen her in much other than Doctor Who. There's very few things that exist.
I know, which was now when you look back, when you see how brilliant she was, and even in that, you look at her, she's acting her socks off. Imagine there, she was like, I think she's in her early 20s anyway, acting right opposite one of the icons of British telly, terrifying woman, Pat Phoenix by all accounts, and Liz. When I got the job on Corrie, Liz was the very first person to text me. And she texted me, and I'm still, I took a photo of the text, because I'm the main one, obviously. Basically, she said that it was a really seminal job for her, and that she hoped that, it was brilliant for me, and she hoped I'd be happy. And she said that she was terrified. It was, I think, one of her first TV jobs. I think, if not the first TV job. And of course, working with Pat Phoenix, who would only call her by, she's called Anita, and so she would only call her Anita. And she said, we kept saying to her, my name's Liz. And then she said, oh yes. Anita, how can you just get your Anita, how do you make your shoes look so white? And things like this. So yeah, so she was full of stories, and she was a wonderful person, Liz. Genuinely was, and I miss her very much.
Jacqueline King, I understand.
Yeah, he was also lovely. Huh?
I understand you cast him.
I did indeed. Well, it was one of those lovely times where you can just say, I know who can play that part. Jacqueline King can play that part. Ring her up, and you ring her up. Well, I didn't personally, but so you go ring her up, and someone rings her up, and then suddenly she's on set, and she was perfect, and I knew she would be. And it was a lovely story because it's the Jubilee story. It's Rita, who is probably my favourite character on Coronation Street. I'm allowed to say that now because Barbara Knox is as magnificent in reality as she is as Rita. She's marvellous. And I thank whatever God or Lord there is that I got to work with her and meet her because she's amazing. And my favourite. And so for the Jubilee episodes, yes, we married her back off to Dennis. And so Jacqueline came in for and then she came back again. So she did, I think, 2 or 3 episodes. And brilliant, Jacqueline. I loved Jacqueline from the minute I met her. There's a size to her and a performance. And yet, you know, and she got to come into Doctor Who and be, you know, the horrible mother from hell, and yet, in Turn Left, I think you see a different side to her and a whole different actress, and she's a wonderful actress, and so it was a privilege. Yeah.
Great fun. This Jubilee episode.
Yeah.
Well, that is our end of part 1. We're going to take a short 10-minute break to refresh ourselves, and then we'll be back to the Street Stars, Battle and the Monsters.
Okay.